Wow. MarkRogersTV just a few minutes after Ohio State dominated Oregon in surprising fashion, 42-20 at AT&T Stadium to conclude the first ever college football playoff with a resounding win again over the Ducks, 42-20 after falling behind 7-0. So all this week, going back to the Sugar Bowl, Rose Bowl doubleheader, I've been asked, how is Ohio State possibly going to hang with Oregon? And after I thought about it and looked at the rosters and looked at the talent on these two football teams, I replied to a number of people, maybe we have this flipped around. How is Oregon going to hang with Ohio State? Oregon's not faster than Ohio State. The Ducks not faster than the Bucks. They play at a faster tempo. Those are two entirely different things, and we saw it on defense for Ohio State. Plenty fast to the football, tackling in space. An impressive defensive clinic for the Buckeyes in this one. What I said to a number of people was, when we look back on these two teams, how many NFL players are going to be produced by Ohio State versus Oregon? I guarantee that this Ohio State football team has more NFL players on this roster than the Oregon roster will produce. There's no question. That doesn't equal a championship all the time, but this Ohio State team is more talented and tougher with more drive and a better running game, as we found out in decided fashion. So it started off with 7 plays, 75 yards, and the Buckeyes really not being able to figure out Oregon, and the Oregon offense in sync, working as a clinic run by Mr. Marcus Mariota, the best quarterback in college football, and he really did nothing on this night to dispel that. He was as good as he could be against a superior Ohio State defense that is so much improved from a team that in 2013 was fairly ragged at times on defense and then lost 4 NFL players and 2 in the first round. How could they possibly be better this year? The hiring of Chris Ash from Arkansas has just been a tremendous find for Ohio State in revamping the secondary in particular. But back to this game, 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown by Oregon, 7-0. Ohio State's defense after that clamped down on Oregon. They tackled in space. They stuffed the run. Oregon ran the football on the opening drive, and that really sets it up for the Ducks. It's myth to think that Oregon hits for a ton of big plays on 3rd and long, and 3rd and long does not bother this offense. It does bother this offense. They love to play in front of the chains. The running game really sets up the pass, and the running game was non-existent in this one, despite, again, starting strong. Royce Freeman, 10 carries for 22 yards. His longest run was 8 yards against this Buckeye defense. And Thomas Tyner, 12 carries for 62 yards. His longest run was just 11 yards. So he had a nice little yards per carry at 5 yards per carry, but didn't hit for any big play. So no big running plays out of this Oregon offense. They go up 7-0. Then, in addition to the Ohio State defense figuring things out, it was also Oregon dropping some big key passes. There was the 3rd and short on the second drive where they could have converted at midfield on a 3rd and 2. That was dropped right in the belly of the wide receiver. Then there was the big drop on the right sideline by Dwayne Stanford that would have gone for 35 to 40 yards easy on the 3rd drive. Stanford did catch 4 passes for 61 yards, but much of that during what was close to garbage time. What I heard all day in setting up this football game was also about how the Ohio State defense was going to be gassed. There were going to be defensive players all over the place, especially up front, along the defensive front, that were just going to have hands on hips, be bent over, not being able to keep up with this 16 to 20 second per increment play offense by the Oregon Ducks, and it was just not evident. I think they were a bit confused. They were back on their heels on the opening drive. Then after that, the Ohio State defense, aside from the big play, the 70-yard up top play off the turnover that made it 21-20, this Ohio State defense was pretty much in control, especially considering 2014 offensive-minded football where everybody gains 400 yards. So the numbers look decent in the pass game and overall for Oregon. But 10 points in the first half, 10 points in the second half, even with Ohio State giving it to them 4 times via turnovers, this game could have been a blowout. But after that 4th turnover, my thought was that Oregon gets within 21-20. Hey, Ohio State's decidedly the better team, but Oregon's certainly talented enough to pull this game off. And what happens if they turn 21-20 into a victory for Oregon? It would be a shame because decidedly the best team is in scarlet and gray, but the Buckeyes had a stretch there in the second half, late third quarter, where they really could have blown this game if Cardale Jones' head would have been somewhere else. After that fourth turnover where he just looked like Jameis Winston all over again, it could have gone south for the Buckeyes. But credit the redshirt sophomore for staying in there and sticking to his game plan and keeping his head about him. 16 for 23, 242, 1 touchdown, 1 pick for Cardale Jones. The interception, not his fault, right in the belly of Jalen Marshall, one of the 4 turnovers in which Marshall should have caught the ball, but it deflected right to the defensive back. Cardale Jones also had 21 carries. Don't look at the stats, only 38 yards. Understand that a lot of those were third and fourth and shorts. And also, of course, the sack yardage counted against the rushing attempts for Cardale Jones. He picked up a number of key third downs in this football game, running with the football. Not huge gains, but 5, 6, 7, 8 yard carries that converted and moved the chains. And his signature play on the night rushing the football was that one where he just barreled over the nose guard of Oregon and just drove him back and needed the first down, got the first down. He did that a number of times. The only more impressive rusher in this football game, of course, was Ezekiel Elliott. If you would have taken a poll, as maybe I should have, MarkRogersTV, my Twitter poll that I run nearly every day, who's the best running back in the Big Ten? 3 games ago, Tevin Coleman, Amir Abdullah, of course Melvin Gordon, Jeremy Langford, all those guys would have gotten more votes than Ezekiel Elliott, the 5th best running back in the Big Ten. The 5th best running back in the Big Ten, carried 36 times. So not just explosive, not just getting the tough yardage, but carrying the load like a man. The sophomore, 36 carries, 246 yards, 4 touchdowns. I can't say much more than that. An amazing 3rd consecutive 200-yard game against the likes of Wisconsin, one of the better run defenses in college football. Alabama, one of the better run defenses in the land as well. And now the Oregon Ducks, who have really stymied the run and offenses in general over the past 6 or 7 games. Ezekiel Elliott, a Sugar Bowl record. That game's been played since the 30s. And now a BCS championship / national championship game record with 246 rushing yards. He was exceptional. Marcus Mariota, as we mentioned off the top, really did nothing to dispel his status as the best quarterback in college football. 24 of 37 for 333. The rush was spotty at times, but much more effective after the first drive, much more effective in the 3rd and 4th quarter when Ohio State took over the game after the 4th turnover and withheld a couple red zone chances. The Ohio State defense extremely impressive in the red zone as Oregon was held out. As prolific an offense as Oregon's had, especially this season, the red zone performance and production has not been what it needs to be, and Ohio State was not the defense to get healthy in the red zone on. Vegas so much loved Oregon, not just on the money line and not just with the -6. But if you looked at some of the prop bets, that really gives you some insight into what Vegas thought of this matchup. If you looked at some of the prop bets that said Ohio State winning by more than 7, by more than 14, by more than 21, you got astronomical betting odds of Ohio State winning a blowout in their favor. Oregon, on the other hand, was more like just like a 12 or 14 to 1 at winning by more than 3 touchdowns, where Ohio State was like 45 or 50 to 1, meaning Vegas did not expect this to be a close game. They thought if somebody was going to pull off the blowout, of course it was going to be Oregon, because they were overmatching Ohio State, and it proved to be the exact opposite. This is an exceptional football game. A football team winning an exceptional Sugar Bowl. The championship game did not live up to what we expected it to be, although it was still in doubt, again, at 21-20, right at the end of the 3rd quarter before the Buckeyes put it away. And even at 2 scores, of course, Oregon was very much in the game, but that Ohio State defense put the clamps on. The job done by Urban Meyer, exceptional once again. He comes to another stop and he wins another national championship to add to the two in Florida, 2006 and 2008. So those are stops at Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State that have been remarkable. If you go on YouTube and check out some of his coaching fundamentals, if you check out in particular his 1-hour presentation to the Ohio High School Athletics Coaches Association, you get a look and a hint of why this guy is such an amazing coach. He talks technique, he talks fundamentals, he talks teaching and coaching. Some of this stuff could be applied to anything, not just football. That's why he's so effective. He relies on details. He knows how to get into the psyche. He's a psychology graduate. He understands how to motivate young men, and he pays attention to detail. And this team was prepared for this game. Oregon, still an elite of college football, but not quite right there when you talk about matching up against the best of the best for that particular year. We saw it against Auburn. We've seen it against LSU. We saw it 5 years ago against Ohio State in a Rose Bowl. We've seen it against Stanford when they've had a team that could somewhat match Oregon on the perimeter, but really outmuscle them. And Ohio State was clearly the more physical team on this day, even though, again, the Oregon Ducks, much more physical than they've been given credit for in recent years. So there's our thoughts on the championship game with the Buckeyes defeating Oregon 42-20. Need to hear from you, folks. We'd love to get your comments on this one. Take any angle you'd like. Urban Meyer, Cardell Jones, the quarterback battle for next year with JT Barrett, and who knows what's going to happen with Braxton Miller, most likely moving on to another school. The Ohio State defense and the much improvement we've seen over the course of the 2014 season. Marcus Mariota's status as a legend in college football. Oregon's inability to quite reach that championship and gain that championship ring, or maybe your top 4 picks for college football 2015 as we start to make those way too early predictions for next football season. Let's talk about it right here on Mark Rogers TV.